Welcome back, everyone. I think you all are in for a treat with this discussion we're about to have with Dr. Melissa Sell. And you don't even know it yet. I think this will be one of your favorite discussions that we'll have had. German New Medicine is such an interesting topic, and most people haven't heard of it, and that's unfortunate. And that's why we're bringing on Dr. Melissa to talk about it. So, Dr. Melissa Sell is a chiropractor who specializes in mindset and health coaching based upon the 5 biological laws of German New Medicine. After over a decade of studying in the world of natural health and 5 years in active chiropractic and health coaching practice, Dr. Melissa discovered the paradigm shifting work of Dr. Hammer, and it completely changed her approach to health and healing. So, Melissa, I read that, and I know that had I not already been privy to what German New Medicine is, I would look at that and be like, I have no clue what the hell that is talking about. So, if you could just go into, just to start, what is German New Medicine? How did you discover it? Who is Dr. Hammer? All of it, the 5 biological laws, everything.
Oh, I am so delighted to share this with everyone because I think it is the biggest missing link, the biggest how have we missed this for 40 years. Dr. Hammer, he 40 years ago, he had a tragic accident in his family. His 17-year-old son was shot, and after the death of his son, a few months later, he developed testicular cancer. And he started putting things together. He knew that cancer didn't run in his family. There was no reason that he should have developed cancer, but he knew that this big shock in his life had something to do with it. And so he started investigating. He started interviewing cancer patients. He started looking at patterns and he started noticing something. And what he noticed was that every man who had testicular cancer, he discovered that they suffered a tragic loss. Every person who had lung cancer had a death right conflict. Everyone who had colon cancer had an indigestible, hard to process situation that they were dealing with. And so basically what he did was he mapped out the entire body, which is this chart back behind me, is the mapping out of the entire human body. What he found, and really like the thing that sets GNM and the 5 biological laws apart from what I had believed about health. I thought I knew everything about health. I thought that, that lifestyle and nutrition and chiropractic and all these things were the only, like, this is how you get healthy. But what he discovered is that our bodies are intelligent, which I already believed and I already knew that, but they're so intelligent that the things that we think are disease are actually intelligent adaptation. So cancer, it's not something going wrong in the body. It's when we look at, I think the title of my workshop was, mastering your mindset against disease. In order to do that, we need to know what we're talking about. When we say disease, what do we even mean? And Dr. Hammer's work helps us to see that what we're calling disease is not an error, is not something that's going wrong in the body, but instead it's an intentional tissue adaptation that your body does in response to shocking trauma. So something catches you off guard in your life and it overwhelms your ability to process and to handle it in that moment. You're isolated, you're caught off guard, and your body says, hey, I have the only way that your body has to help you is by adapting tissues. Your body can add additional tissue cells, decrease tissue cells, or change functionality. And that's how your body steps in to help you in a shocking, traumatic situation. And basically, my work now is helping people to understand this language of the body and then to change our mindset, knowing that our body is responding to our perception and experience. And so I came across this almost 5 years ago now, randomly listening to a podcast. I had never heard it before, not a whisper of it, but ever since learning about it, I've been observing. The really cool thing about GNM is it is an experiential science. It's not something you just hear. You hear things from the world about how cancer works or how disease works, and you can't ever really see it for yourself because if you're not a scientist. But GNM is experiential, and you can see it at work in your body. And I've seen it time and time again, and every single person that I've ever spoken to about it, you can see the threads and you can understand how your body functions, how your psyche functions, and that knowledge, it changes everything about your approach to health. And so that's why I'm so excited to share this with people, because if you haven't heard it, if you don't yet know this language, you may be misinterpreting the things that your body is trying to communicate to you.
So, what are the 5 biological laws? If we could sort of jump right into it, the things that Dr. Hammer discovered, and then I know Tara has some really, really good questions for you.
Yes, so the 5 biological laws. The first biological law is the psyche brain organ connection. And so the psyche is your whole sensory apparatus. Like every bit of you is on board with survival. Your body is programmed to survive and to reproduce. And so, in order to achieve this, the body has to pick up on every little change that's going on in your environment. And when your body picks up on, like I mentioned before, it's something that is isolating and shocking, and you're kind of caught off guard in a moment. If the psyche perceives that something like that has occurred, immediately and automatically a biological program is initiated, and the biological program depends on the content of the conflict. So depending on the situation that happened to you, did you think that you left your wallet on the bus? Oh no, how did that strike you in that moment? You are caught off guard. What am I going to do? How am I going to, my money's in there, is someone going to steal my money? Am I going to lose my ID? You could perceive that shock in many different ways. If you are about to get hit by a car, you can perceive that shock in many different ways. But in a split second, your body, your subconscious mind assesses, okay, to survive this situation, he needs more lung alveoli cells, or he needs more digestive tissue cells, or a wider throat. The body perceives the conflict, and it automatically activates a biological program, which is set off in the brain. And so the really cool thing about this work is that it is verifiable by a brain scan. So Dr. Hammer discovered that when you have a CT scan of the brain, you can see these circular impacts in certain areas, and those areas correlate to tissue adaptations in the body. So everyone with a lung tumor, so if you've got an alveolar lung cancer, there's going to be an impact in your brainstem. If you have a conflict related to your arteries, your coronary arteries, there's going to be an impact in your cerebral cortex. And so he mapped out the entire brain, and by looking at the brain alone, you can see, oh, this person has an active bleeding stomach ulcer. This person has an active, tumor in their kidney. He could tell that from the brain. And so the psyche brain organ connection, the psyche, you perceive the conflict, the body identifies what tissues would be best adapted to help you survive it. There's an impact in a specific region of your brain, and then there is adaptation on the tissue level, psyche, brain, and organ. And so that is present for whenever there's a conflict shock, there's always going to be these three levels that can be identified. So that's the first biological law. The second is the law of two phases. And so the law of two phases is brilliant and it's amazing. And I think every single human needs to learn this for themselves, because this is how your body is functioning. This is how your system is operating. It's like having a computer or a phone and you don't know how to use it. By understanding this language, you're going to start seeing, oh, this is how this works. So when you have a conflict shock, when you've been caught off guard by something in your environment, you're feeling unsafe, you're feeling afraid, you just found out someone is cheating on you, or something terrible has happened to somebody that you care about. In that moment of shock, your body starts this adaptation process, and you shift into a state of heightened sympathetic activity. So this is what most people know as fight or flight. This is when you have cold hands, cold feet, your heart is racing, you're not hungry, your mind is racing about this problem. And essentially what's going on is your body is you're seeking to find a solution. And this is what it's all solution oriented, and your body is just stepping in for you to help you to solve the problem. And again, the body's only way it can help you is biologically. And so are extra cells in your lung going to fix the fact that you're afraid for your life, that you think you're going to die because you're losing money, or because someone you care about has left you alone and now you're all alone and you're like afraid for your life? Are the tissue adaptations going to help you in this psychological problem that you're dealing with? Well, no, but your body only has a biological language that it can help you to survive by these adaptations. And so the body is adapting, you're trying to solve the problem. And as soon as you solve it, the body has a program to set you back to normal. So if during that conflict phase, your body built up additional tissue cells, it has a program to now decompose those cells. And it uses bacteria and fungus to decompose tissue that's no longer necessary. So when we think we have an infection, and this kind of bleeds into the fourth biological law, which is basically that microbes are our helpers. They are in our body to assist us. If we have a conflict and our body builds up extra cells in order to help us survive that stressful situation, those cells now need to be decomposed, and the body's bacteria that are in us all the time, that are just laying dormant. If you swab the throats of tons of people, you're going to find strep, you're going to find, E. coli. If you do samples of people's bodies, there's going to be all sorts of bacteria that are considered pathogenic when seen in a certain state, but most of the time they're just dormant. Tuberculosis, it's just dormant sitting in the body. What it's waiting for is the program to shift. When you resolve a conflict, that's when the quote infection becomes apparent. And it's not an infection at all. It is a deliberate and intentional process by the body to set you back to homeostasis. And so that is, all of these things, when you start seeing this is normal, this is how the body responds to shocking trauma, the body adapts, the tissues either grow or they erode or the function changes. And then once I resolve the conflict, once I'm back to a state of peace, the body goes through a healing process. And so what this does is it causes us to reframe what we think dis-ease really is. I know that if my throat starts hurting and this has happened to me since learning GNM, and it's been so different to see it through this lens. When my throat starts hurting and my head starts hurting and I start having a cough or my nose is running and I'm stuffed up, before I would think, oh, I must have eaten something that affected my immune system. I shouldn't have had that sugar. I shouldn't have eaten those grains. It caused my immune system to be weakened. And now, I've got something. And so that was my old idea. Now I know when I have symptoms, I was stressed for a period of time. I was conflicted. I thought, this stinks. I'm frustrated. I'm fed up. I can't handle this. I can't swallow this for a certain period of time. And now I can look back and say, oh, yes, I know exactly what that was. I know exactly what I was annoyed about or frustrated about or couldn't accept. And when I found a solution to that problem, when I either let it go or shifted my perspective or the situation changed, now my body is healing. The sore throat is my body, the tissue is inflamed and swollen because there's healing happening. And all healing happens in a fluid environment. So there's fluid on the organ level. There's also fluid on the brain level. And so, this headache, this sore throat, this scratchy voice, this drainage, this coughing, all of this, it makes perfect sense if I zoom out and I look at what was I dealing with prior to the development of these symptoms. And so that's what the second biological law allows us to see is that, okay, the conflict, the stress phase, the resolution, now I'm in the healing phase. And halfway through the healing, there's a big surge. This is often when you'll have like a spasms or a coughing fit or a sneezing fit, some type of big squeeze of sympathetic activity to help squeeze the edema that has accumulated on the organ and on the brain level out. And so that's the second biological law, which is, again, so cool for people to understand. You can pinpoint, this is where I am. Oh, I'm not sleeping. I haven't been eating. I've been really stressed about this. I'm in a conflict right now. My hands are cold and once you are aware of this is to resolve the conflict. I need a solution to this problem. And we get really solution oriented. And that is the cool thing is once you know what this is about, you can start solving your problems. The third biological law has to do with our tissue types. So the body is built out of all these different tissues they fundamentally are four different embryonic germ layers. So like when you were an embryo, you differentiated into these four different layers. And from those four layers, all of the organs and tissues of your body developed. And so this is a compass that allows us to see how is this tissue going to behave during conflict activity. The older tissues of the body, so these are the ones controlled by the brainstem and the cerebellum, these types of tissues during the act of conflict, there's cellular proliferation, like I mentioned before. So this is the lung alveoli, this is the colon, there's going to be cellular addition during the act of conflict. And the purpose of this is either to produce more digestive juices or to absorb more oxygen. If it has to do with like the tonsils, we want the tonsils to be bigger so we can produce more of what the saliva to allow us to swallow something. So whatever that tissue does, it's going to increase during the act of conflict to help you to survive. And then during the healing phase, when the body is restoring us to normal function, there is decomposition of those extra cells. Now, the other tissues from the newer brain, the new mesoderm and the cerebral cortex, there is tissue loss during the conflict. And so this, like the bones, There's tissue loss when you're actively in a conflict. The skin, there's cellular erosion when you're in an active conflict. And then when you resolve the conflict, there is restoration. So there's restoration of the bone tissue, there's restoration of the cells that were lost. And so the compass, the third biological law, just allows us to see how do all of these tissues function. When I have a certain symptom pop up on my body, like a zit, that was another big education point for me, is learning where a zit comes from. It's from a sensation of feeling attacked or feeling soiled. And it's the deeper layer of the skin building up additional cells as a protection. And so my body's trying to protect me with this little patch of cells. And then when I resolve the conflict, the body decomposes. And so the little pussy zit that I'm seeing is my body decomposing cells that are no longer necessary. And so that's how you will use the third biological law and the compass to understand, okay, what tissue type is this? Where does this originate? That can allow me to know what area of the brain is involved as well. Fourth biological law, this is the ontogenetic system of microbes. And so this is, like I mentioned, bacteria, fungus, even parasites, and whatever we're calling viruses. They are
I was gonna ask that. Yeah, like, is she gonna go on into viruses? Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, it's evidence of adaptation. That's what's going on. So when you, like I said, if you have an infection, that doesn't mean that a bacteria has taken over your body, that a nefarious, like the bacteria has all of a sudden just turned on you. You know, it was there dormant before and now it's infective. Now it is pathogenic and it's taking over your urethra or it's taking over your colon. That's not what's happening at all. There's not a takeover. These are symbiotic. They live within us and they are our helpers. We evolved alongside these little microbial helpers and we actually need them. They serve us and they are seasonal workers. They only work in the healing phase when the body is either building up tissue that was lost or breaking down tissue that's no longer necessary. And now Dr. Hammer says, you know, viruses, if they exist, because as we know, there is not legitimate evidence that the stuff that we're calling viruses even exists at all in the way that most people think that it does. You know, and it's simply from my perspective and the way I describe it to people, whatever it is that they're seeing in these regions of the body when it's simply evidence of adaptation. The body is doing something. And if you're looking at it, it simply means that an adaptation has taken place. And so when we look at this as evidence of adaptation rather than a causative, I mean, it takes great creative genius for them to look at something under a microscope and give it causative power. This bacteria is what's causing your problem. This virus is what's causing your problem. When that there is just no evidence to substantiate such a claim. And when you zoom out, like Dr. Hammer did, and he saw the body and he saw our biology from this ancient perspective and the fact that these things have always existed, they've always been with us. How can all of a sudden they be harmful to us or damaging to us? We're missing part of the story if that's what you think. And so I feel like this work, it really helps to fill in those gaps of things that just don't make sense about conventional medicine and how we look at the body.
Yeah, and I absolutely love that. Just it's totally a paradigm shift, a way of looking at symptoms in such a different way than we typically do, right now. And I think that I would love for you to just share around that, because there's a lot of people that we know that, like, things like anxiety and depression, they've really, you know, they've increased substantially since all of this that's been happening, and people are always looking at the symptoms of their body. I think in general people look at it as bad, or when they get a diagnosis as bad. And it's so ironic how when they get that diagnosis, and let's say a mother had, let's say breast cancer or something, and the doctor says, well, you have this much time, and how interesting is it that they will, like, express oftentimes the same thing, and maybe perhaps even die around that time that there's been this suggested time frame that person has. So I would love for you to speak around that, just being that the symptoms are not bad, and actually that the body is always on our side, and it's there, trying to help us.
Totally. And a way to frame this even is looking at, is a scab bad? Is a
Mhm.
callus bad? If you, are at elevation and you have an increase in red blood cells in your bloodstream, is that bad? No, we know those all to be adaptation. If you have an injury, there's going to be a scab. The body is healing. If you use a part of your body a lot, there's going to be a callus because your body has adapted. if you've changed your environment and you're at elevation and you need more red blood cells to carry oxygen around your body, that is a normal adaptation. And when medicine and when people start recognizing that tumors are an adaptation, that your body is doing something intentionally, that it's not a nefarious wrongness. When you're looking at symptoms through the lens of wrongness, either something wrong has happened to me, that's the kind of the ultimate victim mode of, the my genes have just they are what they are, or the virus just got me, or I got sick. This is this idea that I'm helpless in the matter, I'm powerless, and things happen to me. And it's a wrong thing. It's a bad thing. It shouldn't have happened, but it did. And now I just have to cope or take medication or suffer. And then even if we graduate into the perspective of this is something that is a result of a poor lifestyle, or I made choices, or I exposed myself to certain foods or toxins or whatever. Now my body is suffering as a result of a wrongness. Again, we're looking at this through the lens of a wrongness. This is something bad that's happening. But when you understand there's nothing wrong happening here. This is a deliberate and an intentional tissue adaptation. So, the tumor isn't a wrongness. The fever is not something that's going wrong. This is correct. This is what the body does. And when you understand the biological laws and you can view it through that lens, you may still have intense symptoms. You may still, be dealing with things that are pretty difficult to get through, coughing or spasms or itching or, you name it. I mean, the body can go through some very intense healing processes, but when you can see it as my body is setting itself right. I was in a state of conflict for a period of time. My body went through deliberate tissue adaptations, and now my body is reversing those adaptations so I can get back to homeostasis. Viewing it through that lens can bring great peace. Like I said before, it may still be intense, and you may, avail yourself of, holistic and natural things to help to soothe yourself and mitigate the symptoms. I mean, even in some extreme cases, even medical intervention to help alleviate the symptoms, so it's not, knowing GNM doesn't mean, oh, you just do nothing because it's a normal process of the body. If you were in conflict for a really long time and there was an excessive amount of tissue adaptation, there are some situations where a surgery is appropriate. I mean, there's even some situations where you don't even want to address it. You don't even want to resolve the conflict because it's been going on for so long. But we really just have to start to look through this lens. And that's really what I encourage people. If you're listening to this and this is the first time hearing this, or if you're like, a health provider or a medical professional, I've been really excited. I've seen a couple of medical doctors who are like learning, like getting into GNM. And it's like, that's where we need to go. People who, it's time to turncoat. I know that there are medical people out there who are, watching the event, who are taking this all in, who are like, what else is out there? Look into GNM, look at the 5 biological laws, test it for yourself, which is so cool that you can do that. And this is where empowerment comes from. When I just know, I don't know on theory, I don't know because of an idea. I know that if an accumulation of cells called a tumor was to be found in my body, I know exactly where it came from. And that's so empowering.
Yeah, and this is where I was going to say it is that mindset piece too, right? Where this isn't happening to me, but maybe this is for me and this is an opportunity, right? Because the event is all about solutions. And there's this big focus on, all this is happening to me and focus on, sickness. And we need to really focus and go inside at this time and do our work. And what would you tell a client who's maybe come to you, who is dealing with, let's say, they're not feeling well, their immune system's not operating the way it should, or maybe they are dealing with anxiety or depression at this time. Like, what are some steps that you would give that person, some tangible steps to help empower them to move forward?
Yes. So first, awareness of whatever is going on, those symptoms, this makes sense. This is not a problem, so looking at this through the lens of there's a solution to this. And really that's what your body is looking for, is solution. So it's getting really profoundly solution oriented and creative. If you are finding yourself just like frustrated or continually back in the same emotional state, you need new resources. You need a new attitude towards problems. It's not a problem. This is a project. And projects are simply one step after another of choosing more and more resourceful reactions to whatever's going on. I mean, in any moment, in any situation, I have the option whether I'm going to catastrophize and get really intense and upset about something, or to minimize and say, this is handleable, even if I don't know the answer right now. It's this attitude of resilience. It's this attitude of, I've got this. And so many people, they just feel small, they feel helpless, they feel powerless. And ultimately, when you think about yourself as an organism, it's when an animal feels powerless, feels helpless, that it, reacts in all sorts of crazy ways. And it's us feeling small, broken, helpless. My body's attacking me, the world, we're feeling small and unable to do things. We have to access a higher consciousness. We have to zoom out from our problems, from our trauma, from the stuff that happens to us. And often you do kind of have to go to a transcendent place to realize, I am not the stuff that's happened to me. I am not my trauma. I am my ability to transmute, transcend, and overcome whatever comes my way. And so we have to build that strength and that trust and that belief in yourself. And if you've never had that before, it's going to feel weird. It's going to feel phony. It's going to feel like imposter syndrome. Who am I to overcome my problems and my trauma? But that when you really understand that it's my perception of my world that's determining the adaptations in my body. And if I can start perceiving the world through a lens of strength and capability and confidence versus a lens of weakness and brokenness and, who am I? But that is the programming that we get in the world since conception. There's something wrong with you. We need to monitor. I mean, that's why the birth process really and everything surrounding that is so profound, because that's when medicine sucks people in and causes us to feel like we are dependent and reliant and small and broken, and that we need them in order to survive. And so people
Well, I
don't
even think of how too, just real quick, how they like label us, and then like even with autoimmune conditions, so to speak, they say, "Oh, your body is attacking itself." So like they're conditioning you to think that your body is wrong and it's doing something to harm you.
Yep. And they're right. And they're the ones that have the answers, and they're the saviors, and they're the helpers. And little old you needs to kind of submit to whatever it is that they say to you. And this is taking the power back from the system that has stripped it from the individual by telling them that their body is broken and wrong and mistaken and doing all sorts of crazy things. Because of course, like when you're coming from that worldview, when you see cancer as a wrongness that needs to be removed, when you see bacteria and viruses as enemies, well, why wouldn't you be saying, thank you, doctor, for this vaccine? Thank you for this surgery. Thank you for this chemotherapy. Because when you are in that model, it makes sense what they're doing. But when you can zoom out and say, why would my body develop a tumor to attack itself? Why would my body turn on itself? I mean, this body has been around for a really long time. It's got really ancient programming. How would humans have even survived if the body was designed to break down and to turn on itself? You have to kind of zoom out to a bigger kind of philosophical, what do I actually believe? And that was one of my points I did want to say, because a big part of this is questioning. Investigate the unquestioned assumptions that you have about life, because the things that we just kind of take for granted, you've never even thought to question it. Question everything, because that's how you're going to figure out for yourself, what do I really believe? Am I just an accumulation of other people's thoughts and other people's assumptions and conclusions that they've come to about the world? Have I ever actually investigated this belief for do I believe for myself personally that the body attacks itself? Does that make sense to me? And most people simply have never asked the question. Therefore, they've never had to come to the answer. And it's something that's just very vague, and it's looming in the background. And it's like, oh, well, I've never really thought of it. Think of it. Look at the things that you have never questioned about life, about biology, about government, about authority. Question the things that you've never thought to question. And that's how you're going to start to find out what is actually true to you, what actually makes sense to you. And so many people are suffering from little old me syndrome. And we see this all over right now, because who am I? I'm not an expert. I'm not a virologist. I'm not an epidemiologist. I'm not a doctor. Who am I to know about bodies and contagion? And so we just fob it off on someone else. We say they tell me what to do because they know more than I do. That is the fundamental problem, is that you have subjugated your mind. You have made yourself small, and you've made experts big. And so you'll do whatever they say, because who are you to know any better? You are a consciousness. You are an individual. You are a being who can determine right from wrong, truth from fiction, who can see through the fog. And it's just you don't believe in yourself enough, because you not believing in yourself is very profitable for a lot of people. And so you thinking that who are you to know, is so profitable. So that's all the messaging that is pounded into your head since you were conceived. And so it's time to shed that layer and to really see, I am me to know. Of course I am to know. I am a consciousness. I am a being. I have thoughts in my head. I can reason. And so for that fact alone, you need to go down this road of looking at all the things that you believe about health. And how have you come to those conclusions? Is it through direct personal experience or hearsay of other people and people who are experts?
Yeah, and I love that, because what you're touching on is the importance of really taking back your power and saying, okay, I've got to take responsibility here, because right now we're just seeing how, the mass consciousness is really stuck in this victim consciousness. And I mean, it's not working. And so we've got to take responsibility. Again, it's 100% about taking that responsibility, getting involved in our health, getting interested in our health. But that does work against the current kind of narrative and past narrative that, well, the doctor knows more than you know. It's a really disempowered kind of belief and programming that's there. So I think that's just so awesome to just remind our viewers to question everything and take responsibility and start asking your body, like, what could this mean? What is this for?
I actually have something on that real quick. On speaking of questioning, I have two, and I'll start with the first one. So when it comes to, let's say, the COVID specific symptoms, right? Obviously now with the use of the PCR test, this is a whole long nuanced conversation. The list of symptoms is now like 30 symptoms long. But let's say like the initial symptoms of like a dry cough, hypoxia, how does that relate, or how do you look at that from a German new medicine perspective?
Yep, we would just look at the symptoms that are presenting in an individual. So a dry cough, and so like the typical, like the COVID type symptom is this adaptation of the bronchial mucosa. And the bronchial mucosa responds to a conflict of territorial fear. And so that is feeling unsafe in your territory in any way, feeling threatened, feeling, uncertain, feeling a sense of fear. And so what happens, and so what the psyche, the body is picking up on is she's not safe, and she can't handle it. And so the body in that moment erodes, it widens the bronchial mucosa, because to bring in more air so that you can get out of this fearful kind of dangerous territorial environment that you're in. And so for every moment that you're in fear, this is what's important. Every moment, the intensity and the duration of the conflict is going to determine the intensity and the duration of the healing phase. And so if you are feeling unsafe, not good in your environment, just kind of unsettled about this, whatever it is that caught you off guard, of feeling, and even just the idea that there is danger out there, or I shouldn't be exposed to vaccinated or unvaccinated people. Because I've talked to a couple of people recently who have all the COVID symptoms, and they're kind of freaked out, and they're like, this is actually really intense. And they're a little wobbly about, okay, is this an actual thing that's out there that can get me? And that's why we always have to zoom out and look at what was happening in your life before the symptoms came. And the people that I've spoken to, there was stuff going on. And oddly enough, like the two people I've spoken to recently, and it had to do with split energy regarding career for these couple of people, of doing something that they don't want to be doing. They hate it. They don't like the way that they are working. And so your work is part of your territory. And so it's like, okay, so let's look at that. Let's look at what you were losing sleep about, what you were not feeling good about, what was your energy split over. And then there was something that shifted. One of the people, they were traveling for this work that they don't like, and they were coming back home. And that can represent a resolution. It's like, okay, I'm released. Okay, I'm out of that situation, resolution. And then, here are all these symptoms now. And so the intensity of those symptoms, what that indicates to me, it isn't that you pick something up while traveling. It isn't that, there's something crazy shedding from, a lab or whatever. It's that you had an adaptation in your body and now your body is setting it back to normal. And the intensity that you're experiencing is simply the adaptation process, is that your body now has to rebuild that mucosa that was eroded during the active conflict. And so you're going to have inflammation in your chest. You're going to be coughing. I mean, I had a very brief conflict, but it was a very intense conflict. And it was about swallowing. I couldn't swallow something. And I had lingering symptoms for like 4 weeks after it. And it was because of the intensity of the conflict. I had drainage in my throat. I had a sore throat. I had a cough that just kind of lingered on for 4 weeks. But because I understood it through this lens, it wasn't comfortable. I didn't love it. It was not fun. But you can, when I'm unwell, when I'm adapting, it's kind of, there's a coziness to it. There's soup, and you kind of make the best of it when you're in it. But I knew my body's doing exactly the right thing. I was not exposed to something. Nothing got me. This is just a normal process. And the more you can see it that way, the easier the process can be for you.
A quick follow up to that, and this is so interesting because it's like the reframe of that my body is doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. But there's also some balance, and I've talked to you about this before, of not subjecting yourself to just intense amounts of toxins and what have you, like living right next to a millimeter wave tower. So how has your perception shifted on the role of toxins, or let's say even going into food? Like are there any bad foods, or is it like you should just be eating, like what is your perception of food and toxins and all of that?
We have to look at ancient biology, like that. The information that is informing the adaptations of my body is ancient, and so we should be living in accordance with how our biology developed. And so that does mean there's a biological way to live, and so that's going to be not processed food, not EMF and radiation and chemicals. Those are products of modern living. And so I don't want to excessively expose myself to that. But at the same time, I know that my body is adaptable. And I find that we have to step into an empowering position regarding food, regarding toxins, regarding things that are, to some extent outside of our control, chemtrails, whatever. I want to be in a position of maximum empowerment because I know my perception of that stuff, toxic food, toxic environment, has an effect on the organism. However, if I add to whatever its kind of just effect is as a substance, fear, resistance, this shouldn't be happening, this is wrong, I shouldn't be exposed to this can harm me, that puts me in the weaker position. That disempowers me and it empowers the external substance, the external thing. And I don't ever want to do that. So even if it does have, some type of inherent energetic capacity to influence my organism, my body, I don't want to add to that my energy. And so I don't believe that anything has the power to harm me. Am I going to, go out of my way to expose myself to toxins? Absolutely not. And I'm going to do my best, as I have before, to minimize my exposure to those things. But I now no longer am seeing them as this threat and this thing that I have to constantly be on the lookout for, or detoxing, or protecting myself with shields and guards and you know what I mean? Like that to me creates a more stressed, intense environment. And I know that health is homeostasis. Homeostasis is peace. Peace is balance. And so I want to facilitate all of the things in my life that add to my sense of peace and balance. And so, and if for some reason that meant, okay, I feel actually really good about this EMF shield or whatever, then I would do that, but, just for me, I'm going to take all the power back for myself, and then I make wise choices from that stance.
Mm-hmm. Can I take you, Melissa, back to when you were talking about the sore throat, and when these symptoms do show up, and this opportunity to just really kind of question and recognize that maybe there's conflict, there's something that's been going on. And you look at like the typical way that we've been living on this planet, and it's, to just quickly medicate, or like in some way, we don't want to experience that. We don't want to experience pain. So we're going to just try to cope, right? In whatever way, shape, or form. And I think, like, because a lot of this is making me think, and I know that you're just really dialed into mindset, is that we know that it's through those times where we are challenged, that's where the opportunities are presented for us, where we can increase our awareness. And just seeing how, like there's just so much of this, go get a pill, go take this, go do this. I would love it if you could share a little bit around that.
And I think this kind of goes back to the birth thing because women have been trying to avoid the discomfort of birth. And so like, did your mother, as far as like imprinting goes and early examples that you had of avoiding painful or difficult situations, if that's the culture, is we want to avoid this thing, we just want to bypass it, knock me out, take the baby out of me, knock me out and just take the disease out of me, and then I'll wake up and everything will be fine. There are these kind of, these milestones, and it's part of our culture that has degraded in the sense where people aren't, we make it really cushy and comfy and easy to avoid growth challenges. But these growth challenges are profound and they're important and they cause us to evolve. And really, what they cause us to do is to see how powerful we are. So that's the reason that it's, culturally encouraged for you to, oh, well, just take the pill, just, just do the surgery, just jump over the hard part and we'll get to the good part. But the growth and the evolution and the belief in yourself and the realization of who you really are and what you're actually capable of, when you skip over that step, we avoid, we shy away from it. We're afraid of failing. And so it's easier to never even be faced with the opportunity to fail by just passing over the challenging segment. And so when you are changing your attitude, it's like, oh, I can do hard things. I can do difficult things. I can get through, tough healing phases. I can look at this sore throat and I can look at this symptom and I can look at this pain from a higher perspective. I can access something that's greater than me. It's when I'm really zoomed in to myself and my problem and my story and this narrative about me that I suffer, and things are hard and things are difficult. And so much of like the mindset work I do with people is zooming out. It's bigger perspective. It's, can you see this from a new lens? Can I look at the world through the lens of, I've got this, I'm a strong, capable, creative, cosmic consciousness being that is capable of doing hard things, interesting things, cool things, creative things. And this is just one of the many experiences. When you can look at, a symptomatic healing phase as this is just an experience, and I'm here for a variety of experiences. I'm here to feel what it's like to not be able to use my voice because my throat is so sore, or what it's like to not be able to, go outside because my ankle is swollen, or because, I'm experiencing this symptom for right now. Like, be there. Be in the experience. Look at what it's like to be in your body while experiencing this, without the narrative that says this is wrong, you should be doing this instead. And that's that split energy. When you have different voices in your head of, you should be doing more, you should just take a pill, you should do this, you should do that, you have to quiet down. You have to like get in tune with the silence. And from that silence is where you will find strength. So many people, the reason they're torn and confused is because they've got too many voices in their head, too many experts, too many opinions, too many, thoughts and beliefs that weren't organically generated. They were downloaded. And so we just play all these different tapes in our minds all day long, and we're so divided. It's because we don't even know what our own true, authentic, aligned sense of self is. And so getting those voices out of your head, be with the healing, be with the discomfort, be with whatever this experience is trying to show you, because ultimately everything really is, it's leading back to you as a consciousness and your power. And ultimately to see that there is no division, there is no separation, there is no loss, there is nothing to be afraid of outside of me. When you go there and you get to that kind of biggest perspective, and you see that it was this difficult situation that had to lead you on the journey, then you kind of see what it's all about. And I mean, so many people watching this, I'm sure, are resonating because like, you've been through that. You went through the dark night of the soul. You went through the tough stuff. But what did it do? It led you to something bigger. It led you to linking up with all that is and realizing that there are no problems. There are, this is just a creative endeavor. We're here to have these experiences like a sore throat, like a difficult healing phase, and to learn about who we are through the experience.
I love that so much. And I love like the empowerment behind it, in that, like, especially when a world is caught up in a victim consciousness, of understanding that your health is essentially entirely in your hands. It's all in your hands. You are fully capable. There is no expert outside of you that you need to rely on. It all stems from within you, and turning back to your own observations and experiences. So building off of that, and we have two more questions for you, and I'll start, and then I know Tara has one to round us out. What for you as a person who sees clients or patients, whatever you want to call them, what is the craziest thing that you have seen? Because I know German New Medicine, my wife and I have looked through it. It can get very, very specific on the exact type of conflict for the exact type of symptom, right? What is the craziest thing that you have seen? Like, oh my God, that very specific thing directly ties back to a specific type of conflict. I know you probably have a lot of them. So,
Oh man, I mean, literally every single time. I mean, a breast lump and a separation conflict, an indigestible, like this one is so interesting. So the colon and like the digestive tract responds to an indigestible morsel, something that you can't process, something that you can't accept, something you can't digest. And the more kind of dirty and ugly the situation that you can't process, the lower down in the colon that it will manifest. And so I learned about, a person who was,
wow.
diagnosed with colon cancer, and I learned about the thing that that person had dealt with in their life. And I was like, whoa, yes. Okay. That is, and it always lines up, and it's just like, wow, that the body
Incredible.
can read so specifically the type of conflict, the extent, the kind of degree of how kind of unlovely and dirty and kind of gross the situation is, and the body will manifest the extra cells at exactly the area that is meant to kind of help you to process that. It's remarkable. The specific location. Oh gosh, one friend told me about a situation with her foot, and a skin situation that she had show up on her foot, and the way that she felt soiled in that exact location. And
Wow.
so, like, this fungal thing that showed up is from feeling attacked or feeling soiled, and it was, on the foot, and it was on the side related to her siblings, and her right side was her sibling side. And it's just the specificity, and that's the thing that blows my mind and that I love about the GNM work and the discovery that Dr. Hammer made, is just the accuracy, the specificity of why the right side, not the left side, why the right breast, not the left breast, why here and not there, why now. And this really fills in all of those dots, where it's not just a detox process. It's not just, oh well, your body decided it needed to shed this at this time. Well, why? But when you see the integration of the psyche, and you understand this was going on, this resolved, the situation changed, and now the symptom has come up, that just fills in all the gaps for me. It's just so cool.
I just love that. Melissa, my question is, and we're so grateful you're here. Why is the time now? Like, why do you feel that it's time that we start sharing around this and really showing up? Like, what is your thoughts around that? The time is now.
It's the perfect time. I mean, all this stuff at the last 2 years. I mean, it's mind blowing. Two years. I was scrolling back through like my photo reel, and it's just like, oh, we've been posting about this for a while. We've been like doing this thing for a minute. But it has been a really wonderful kind of launch pad for higher consciousness, for people getting in front of this information, connecting themselves. I've gotten so many messages from people that are just like, oh, I've been looking for this. I've been wanting, and who knows, this apparently had to happen in order for people to crack open and to be willing to look at things from a new perspective. When things are good, when things are easy, when life's just kind of floating along, I don't really need to investigate my beliefs. I don't really need to look at my, unquestioned assumptions about life. What for? Everything's going fine. But it's when stuff doesn't go fine, when things are a little crazy, when you are challenged. And that is, it's challenge that leads to growth and evolution, and we're being challenged by the stuff that's going on. But it's all for the greatest good. It's all for, entertainment. I mean, it's been a very entertaining couple of years. And the more that we can see it through this lens of, I'm just here to learn, I'm just here to experience things, and to realize that I am not powerless, that I do have control, I do have agency, I can decide because that's the thing, is no one can take your perception from you. No one can take your mind from you. They can take your freedom, they can take your body, they can take your money, but they can't take your mind. They can't take your perception. And so you
Mm.
stepping into that power of, I get to see this how I want to see this. Even if everything's been taken from you, I get to perceive this how I want to perceive this. I get to decide how this affects me. That's your power always. But you do have to step into that power, because it's like our minds have been co-opted by all of the fear and the anxiety and the worry and the depression, and what about this and what about that. And it's like, it's your ability to kind of stand in your mind and say, this is okay, we can handle this, and you rise above it. And that is, what I do with people, ultimately it's experience transformation. It's helping you to realize that I can transform this experience. Because ultimately the GNM work and understanding how the body works, ultimately what do I need to do? I need to have a peaceful experience. I need to be able to return to peace. And it's not that we can protect ourselves and shield ourselves from ever having a shock. That's the thing about a shock. It comes when you don't expect it. You're not anticipating it. That's what creates the biological adaptation, and the program to initiate is the unexpectedness of the situation. And so what do? I become a resourceful responder. I become highly adaptable. I love the term anti-fragile. That was Nassim Nicholas Taleb coined it, and he has a book about it. But it's basically that it's not that I'm resilient and bad stuff happens and I'm not affected. It's that I'm anti-fragile, meaning that stuff happens, trauma happens, unexpected things happen, and I actually get better. I get stronger. And I love that attitude. I love that vibe. I love that energy, because what does that mean? It doesn't matter what happens. It matters how I respond. It matters how I integrate this and what I build as a result of it. And so anti-fragile energy, attitude, mindset is what I teach the people that I work with, because that's what we need. I need a way to turn this problem into a project, to take this problem and to form a solution using my creative resources. And so we have to expand. We have to go to places that we never thought we'd have to go to in our minds. But once you go there, you say, oh, I've had this access all along. And I'm so happy that the stuff that happened led me to this point, so that I can, kind of take the reins of my experience for however long left I have here.
Melissa, can I ask just one question before we let you go here, Alex? What is your self-care toolbox at this time with everything going on? Like, what are those things that really ground you? And just keep you feeling your best.
Exercise for sure. I mean, I always eat well, but eating well is just kind of one of the pillars of my experience. But exercise, movement, music, my dogs, nature. I've been getting massages lately, which have been wonderful. And so I mean, my whole lifestyle, nothing has changed. I mean, it's just I do the things that really just allow me to have a peaceful experience, and so everything that I do is around that enjoying my life, doing the things that make sense to me. It's nothing different than I was doing before, but maybe more just more awareness to the fact that my life is whatever I want it to be and however I create it. And so if I get off my normal habits and my normal activities, I suffer the consequences of it. And so I've learned not to get off doing the things that make me feel best.
I love that so much. I hope for the people watching this, like I said, this might be your favorite talk. You just don't know it yet. Like this is it's so empowering. It's such an empowering perspective to be in when you really realize you are the co-creator of your reality. You are in charge of your own health. Everything is totally in your control, and your mindset totally shapes your reality. It's incredible. So we so appreciate you, Melissa. Just as a last one, where can people find you? Where can they find more of your work, and where can they find more about German New Medicine?
Yes, drmelissasell.com, where you can contact me. My YouTube channel is great. If you're like, okay, what is this GNM stuff? It's a great jumping in point. I've got a lot of tutorial videos, a GNM 101, that will just kind of lay the foundation so you can see how the 5 biological laws operate. For GNM education, there is a teacher. His name is Helmut Pilhar, and he's who I recommend taking his courses. They're all currently being translated into English, which is excellent. He directly was approved by Dr. Hammer to teach the work. And so I have a link on my website where you can find all of his resources. And so, Instagram, Telegram, Dr. Melissa Sell. Come find me and say hello.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I hope you all had your playbook out during that. If not, make sure you're taking down some notes now. This topic is just incredible. And thank you again, Melissa, for joining us. This was an incredible discussion.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Melissa. And I've gone and watched almost all of your YouTube videos around New German Medicine, and they're wonderful. And we know that the mother of all learning is repetition. So come back to this video. There is so much rich content here. I know that I wrote like 4 pages of notes, and I'm going to come back to this video and watch it again. So I am just so grateful that you are here with us, and just thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you, guys.